The gunshot missed Mara's head by 3 inches. She felt the heat of it, the concrete pillar beside her exploding into dust and shrapnel that cut her cheek. Her laptop clattered to the oil-stained parking garage floor, the screen still glowing with the files that were going to get her killed, bank accounts that shouldn't exist, names from history textbooks moving money that could collapse governments, a shadow network of the world's oldest families playing God with economies. Adrian Rothschield appeared like death in a designer suit. His Aston Martin screamed around the corner, tires shrieking against concrete. He stepped out mid-drift with a gun already drawn, moving with the kind of precision that told Mara everything she needed to know. This banking heir had killed before, and he'd do it again tonight if necessary. "Get in," he commanded, his British accent cold as alpine ice. "Now!" Another shot ricocheted past her ear. Mara didn't think. She ran, diving into the passenger seat as Adrian returned fire with calm, methodical accuracy. 3 shots. 2 men dropped. The Mercedes peeled away, leaving bodies and questions in the underground darkness. Adrian floored the accelerator before her door was fully closed. The G-force slammed it shut, pinning Mara against leather seats that cost more than her annual salary. "Who the hell are you?" she gasped, adrenaline making her voice shake. "Why were they shooting? How did you—" "Those were cleaners," Adrian said, his voice maddeningly calm as he navigated the Zurich streets at dangerous speed. "You found something you weren't supposed to find, Miss Najeri, and I've been tracking you since you breached the Zurich server at 2347 last Tuesday." Mara's blood went cold. She'd been so careful. Military-grade encryption, proxy servers, digital footprints scrubbed clean. But this man, this stranger who'd just saved her life, had been watching her for a week. "Take me to the police," she demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. Adrian laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound that made her skin crawl. "The police commissioner's daughter just married into the Warburg family. Every intelligence agency in Europe has our people embedded. You have no allies, Miss Najeri. Only me." The city lights faded behind them as they drove deeper into the Swiss Alps. 2 hours of winding mountain roads, snow-covered peaks rising like prison walls on either side. Mara noticed things she didn't want to notice. Blood on his cuff that wasn't his, the way his hands stayed perfectly steady on the wheel, the 4 phone calls he made in rapid German that she couldn't quite follow. The villa emerged from the darkness like something from a Gothic nightmare. Stone and glass perched on a cliff edge, invisible from any road, surrounded by forests that looked like they'd swallow screams without echo. Mara's reflection stared back at her from floor-to-ceiling windows. A terrified woman in blood-spattered clothes standing in the entrance hall of a gilded cage. Adrian led her inside, his footsteps echoing on marble floors worth more than her childhood home. Original Rothko paintings lined the walls. A fireplace roared with heat that couldn't touch the cold settling into her bones. He turned to face her, gray eyes catching the firelight. "You'll stay here," he said, not asked. "Under my protection, anything you need I'll provide. Anyone who comes for you will die before they reach the property line." Mara's fingers curled into fists. "And what do you want in exchange? Men like you don't save women like me out of charity." Adrian stepped closer, invading her space with the casual dominance of someone who'd never been denied anything in his life. He smelled like expensive cologne and gunpowder, like old money and fresh violence. "We'll discuss terms of your repayment when you're not in shock," he said softly, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "For now. Dinner is at 8. Don't make me come find you, Mara." He walked away, leaving her standing in the entrance hall with her heart pounding and her mind racing. The encrypted drive was still in her jacket pocket, the one with all the evidence, all the files that proved everything, which meant Adrian either didn't know she still had it or he was testing her. Either way, she was trapped in paradise with a man who was either her savior or her next captor. And somewhere in the terror, underneath the adrenaline and fear, was a question she didn't want to examine too closely. Why had she noticed the way his eyes reflected the firelight? Why had her breath caught when he said her name? Mara and Jerry had always been too smart for her own good. Her mother said it when she dropped out of university to teach herself cybersecurity. Her ex-boyfriend said it when she chose a job offer in Switzerland over staying in Nairobi with him. Her boss at the fintech firm said it every time she found vulnerabilities in systems that were supposed to be impenetrable. but she'd never felt her intelligence like a death sentence until RAW 32C of Swiss Air Flight 286, when her laptop screen lit up with proof that conspiracy theories were just conspiracies that hadn't been declassified yet. She'd been running routine penetration tests, the boring part of her job, finding weak spots in blockchain security for clients who paid obscene amounts to keep their money invisible. But this firewall shouldn't have existed. It was hidden behind 17 layers of encryption, protected by algorithms that would take quantum computers years to crack. It took Mara 47 minutes. The first file opened like Pandora's box made of spreadsheets. Rothschild, Warburg, Schiff, names she recognized from history textbooks, from conspiracy documentaries her college roommate used to watch at 3 a.m. Except these weren't theories. These were bank transfers, political funding trails, offshore accounts moving millions through shell corporations with names like Alpine Holdings and Northern Star Capital. Currency manipulation, market destabilization, political campaigns funded through layers so complex they looked random. She screenshotted everything, her hands moving on autopilot while her brain tried to process what she was seeing. 3 encrypted drives, one in her laptop, one on a USB in her carry-on, one uploaded to a server she'd built herself using borrowed cloud infrastructure. That's when her laptop camera light flickered on. She hadn't activated it, hadn't opened any programs that needed camera access, but the tiny green LED blinked once, twice, steady. Someone was watching her. Someone knew exactly what she'd found. Mara's fingers froze over the keyboard. The cabin around her blurred. Crying baby in row 28. Businessman snoring across the aisle. Flight attendant rolling a drink cart. Normal people on a normal flight, and she was the only one who knew the world wasn't what they thought it was. She closed the laptop with hands that shook despite her best efforts. 6 more hours to Zurich, 6 hours to figure out what to do with information that could start wars or end them, depending on who got to control the narrative. She pressed her forehead against the cold airplane window and watched clouds drift past like they didn't carry the weight of secrets that could kill her. The parking garage smelled like gasoline and concrete. Mara's heels clicked against the floor as she walked toward her rental car, every shadow suddenly suspect, every sound making her jump. Her phone had died somewhere over the Alps, and she felt the absence of connectivity like a missing limb. Row C, space 47, white Toyota that looked exactly like every other rental car in Switzerland. The black Mercedes was idling 3 spaces away, engine running, windows tinted so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. No license plate on the front, just smooth, expensive metal that caught the fluorescent lights and reflected nothing. Mara's pace quickened. Her carry-on bounced against her hip, laptop bag suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The USB drive in her jacket pocket might as well have been a nuclear warhead for how dangerous it made her. The Mercedes doors opened simultaneously. 2 men emerged, dark suits, military posture, faces that looked like they'd been designed in the same factory that produced assassins for spy movies. They moved with coordinated precision, spreading out to cut off her escape routes. Mara ran. She dropped her coffee, heard it splash across concrete behind her. Her fingers fumbled for her keys, vision tunneling as panic turned her genius brain into static. "Miss Jerry." One of them called her name like he was asking for directions, calm and polite. "We just want to talk." People who just wanted to talk didn't corner women in parking garages at midnight. She made it to her car, got the key in the lock, and that's when she saw the third man, blocking the driver's side, tall and broad with hands that could break her neck without effort. Mara was trapped between concrete pillars and men who'd been sent to make her disappear. The gunshot came from nowhere and everywhere at once. The Aston Martin appeared like divine intervention, made of British engineering. Midnight blue, moving at speeds that should have been impossible in a parking garage, tires screaming as it drifted around the corner in a perfect Tokyo drift arc. The driver's door flew open mid-motion. Adrian Rothschild stepped out like he was arriving at a gala instead of a firefight. Charcoal suit perfectly tailored, dark hair slightly mussed, and a gun in his hand that he wielded with the casual expertise of someone who'd been trained by the best security money could buy. "Get in," he said, gray eyes meeting hers across 15 feet of parking garage. "Now." The men from the Mercedes raised their weapons. Adrian didn't flinch, just fired 3 times with methodical precision. 2 men dropped. The third dove behind a pillar. Mara didn't think. She ran toward the Aston Martin, toward the stranger who'd just killed for her, because he was the only option that involved staying alive. She dove into the passenger seat. Adrian was back in the driver's seat before she'd fully landed, and the car was moving before she could close the door. G-force slammed it shut, pinning her against leather that smelled like money and danger. Behind them, gunshots sparked off the concrete. Adrian took a corner so fast Mara's stomach dropped, and then they were on the main road, accelerating into the night like they were outrunning the past itself. "Who the hell are you?" Mara gasped, her hands shaking so hard she had to clench them in her lap. "Adrian Rothshield," he said, like his last name explained everything, like he expected her to know exactly who he was and what that meant. "And you, Miss Njeri, have just made yourself the most wanted woman in Europe." The car climbed higher into the mountains. Mara watched Zurich's lights fade in the side mirror, watched civilization disappear behind them, until there was nothing but snow-covered peaks and darkness, so complete it felt like the world was ending at the edge of the headlights. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything while her body was still flooded with adrenaline. The files, the men, the stranger who'd saved her life and murdered for her in the same breath. "You said you've been tracking me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Since last Tuesday. How? Why?" Adrian's hands were perfectly steady on the wheel, like he drove through assassination attempts every weekend. "You breached the Zurich server at 2347, got through 17 layers of encryption that should have taken months to crack. You were inside for 47 minutes before you realized someone was watching you." Mara's blood went cold. He knew everything. The exact time, the exact duration, which meant, "The firewall," she whispered. "It was designed to be cracked. You wanted someone to find those files. Not someone." Adrian glanced at her, and in the dashboard lights, his eyes looked almost silver. "You specifically. We've been watching you for 6 months, Miss Njeri, tracking your work, analyzing your methods, waiting for the right moment to introduce you to information you couldn't ignore." The betrayal felt like a physical blow. "You set me up. The files, the breach, the men in the parking garage, all of it was staged. The files were real. The threat is real. What I manufactured was the timing and the method." His voice was cold, clinical. "My family, the Rothschild family, is voting in 3 months on whether to expand operations into digital currencies and cyber warfare. I oppose that decision. I need proof of what they're planning, and I need someone brilliant enough to help me find it, someone they won't see coming. So you made me a target, destroyed my life, got me hunted by assassins. I saved you from assassins," Adrian corrected. "The moment you found those files, you became a problem that needed solving. My family has protocols for problems like you, permanent solutions that don't leave evidence. I intervened before they could activate those protocols." Mara wanted to scream, to jump out of the moving car, to do anything except sit there listening to this man explain how he'd manipulated her life like she was a chess piece. "Why me?" she demanded. "Out of every cybersecurity analyst in the world, why track me for 6 months?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. The car climbed higher, snow beginning to fall in thick flakes that caught in the headlights like stars. "Because I saw you testify before the Kenyan Parliamentary Committee on Digital Security," he finally said. "You were 23, the youngest analyst they'd ever called, and you told them, to their faces, that their encryption standards were embarrassingly obsolete and designed by people who learned technology from reading magazines. You didn't care that you were ending your government career before it started. You cared about being right." He took a sharp curve, the Aston Martin handling it like the road was designed for this exact car. "I've spent my entire life being correct and silent, knowing the truth and keeping it locked away for the good of the family. When I saw you refuse to do that, I knew you were exactly what I needed." "A weapon," Mara said bitterly. "You needed a weapon, so you made one." "A partner," Adrian corrected. "But yes, I manufactured the circumstances to create one. That's what people like me do, Miss Njeri. We move the chess pieces. The only question is whether you're willing to stay on the board long enough to help me win the game." The villa appeared through the snow like a fairy tale written by someone who'd never believed in happy endings. All stone and glass, perched on a cliff that dropped away into darkness, surrounded by forests that looked like they'd been growing since before civilization discovered Switzerland. Adrian parked in a garage that held 6 other cars, each worth more than Mara's childhood home. He killed the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. "What happens now?" Mara asked, her voice small in the expensive darkness. Adrian turned to face her fully for the first time. Up close, she could see the details she'd missed in the chaos, the slight scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened when he was thinking, the exhaustion in his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept well in a very long time. "Now," he said softly, "you make a choice. I can take you to the police, where you'll be dead within 48 hours. I can give you money and a new identity, where you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Or you can stay here, under my protection, and help me tear down the system from the inside." That's not a choice. That's 3 different kinds of trap. Adrian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome to my world, Miss Jerry, where every option is a calculated risk, and the only real question is which risk you're willing to take." He got out of the car, came around to open her door with a courtesy that felt like mockery. Mara stepped out into the snow, her inadequate jacket doing nothing against the alpine cold. Adrian shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking. It smelled like him. Expensive cologne, gunpowder, old money, and secrets. "Dinner's at 8 tomorrow," he said, leading her toward the villa entrance. "Don't make me come find you." And Mara, who'd never taken orders from anyone in her life, followed him inside because she was smart enough to know she didn't have any other choice. Not yet. Mara woke in a bed that cost more than her car. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The files, the gunshots, Adrian Rothschield and his calculated manipulation wrapped in designer suits. She was in his villa, in his cage, alive only because he'd decided she was more useful breathing than dead. The guest suite was obscene in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Alps, a bathroom bigger than her Nairobi apartment, and closets full of clothes that definitely weren't hers. Someone had removed her blood-stained outfit while she slept and left silk pajamas that probably cost what she made in a month. She wanted to burn them on principle. Instead, she pulled on a robe she found hanging in the bathroom, cashmere, naturally, and went exploring. The villa was a maze of marble and money. Original art on every wall, furniture that belonged in museums, and a silence so complete it felt like the world had ended, and she was the only one who'd survived. She found Adrian in his study, and the scene stopped her in her tracks. He was on a conference call in French, his voice cold and authoritative as he discussed la situation Jerry, while simultaneously trading currency futures on 3 different monitors. The screens showed numbers that made her head spin. Millions moving with a keystroke, markets responding to his decisions in real time. He noticed her standing in the doorway but didn't end the call, just watched her with those calculating gray eyes while continuing his conversation, switching seamlessly between French and German and what sounded like Mandarin. Mara felt like a specimen under glass, a problem he was solving between breakfast and lunch. Finally, he ended the call with a curt, "Nous en reparlerons," and turned his full attention to her. "Coffee?" he asked, gesturing to a setup that looked like it belonged in a specialty cafe. "Answers," Mara countered. Adrian smiled slightly. He slid a tablet across his desk, all glass and chrome, designed to look like the future. "Your apartment in Nairobi was raided at 4 a.m. local time. Your employer received a call from Interpol at 6 a.m. Your mother was visited by local authorities conducting a wellness check at 7 a.m. Every digital trace of your existence is being systematically erased." Mara's legs went weak. She grabbed the back of a leather chair to steady herself. "My mother is fine. Confused, but fine. I made sure the visit was brief and non-threatening." Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "They were told you'd been flagged in an ongoing investigation and that authorities were trying to locate you for questioning. Nothing more." "You did this." Her voice was hoarse. "I prevented this," Adrian corrected. "If I hadn't intervened yesterday, you'd already be in a CIA black site, and your family would be planning your funeral. Instead, Your mother thinks you're on an extended work trip. Your employer has been compensated for your sudden departure, and your digital footprint has been professionally scrubbed." He stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. "The question isn't what I did, Miss Jerry. The question is what happens next, and that depends entirely on whether you're willing to work with me." Mara wanted to scream, to hit him, to do anything except stand there feeling like her life had been stolen and repurposed without her consent. "I need coffee," she finally said. Adrian's smile was genuine this time. "That I can provide." Adrian cooked, which surprised her, not reheating takeout or assembling a charcuterie board, actually cooking. Dover sole seared to perfection, roasted vegetables that looked like they belonged in a food magazine, wine that probably cost more than she'd made in her entire career. Mara watched from the marble counter, trying to reconcile this domestic version of Adrian with the man who'd killed for her 12 hours ago. "You can't keep me here indefinitely," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Can't I?" Adrian plated her food with precision that suggested training she didn't want to think about. "You have 3 choices, Miss Jerry. 1. I turn you over to my family's security apparatus, and you disappear. 2. I release you into the world, where you survive perhaps 48 hours before someone less charitable finds you. 3. You stay here, under my protection, and we find a mutually beneficial arrangement." Beneficial for who? He leaned across the counter, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. "I need someone with your particular skills, someone unconnected to the old families, someone brilliant enough to have found what you found, and reckless enough to have kept it. So I'm still just a tool to you. You're a potential partner. There's a difference." Adrian poured wine into glasses that probably belonged in a museum. "My family is voting in 3 months on digital expansion. I need proof that their plans will cause more harm than profit. I need someone who can navigate systems they don't understand and find evidence they're trying to hide. I need you, Mara." It was the first time he'd used her first name. It shouldn't have mattered. It did. "And what do I get?" she asked. "Besides not dying." "Access, resources, the ability to do what you've always wanted, expose corruption at the highest levels, but this time with protection powerful enough that you might actually survive the exposure." Mara took the wine glass, her fingers brushing his. "You make it sound noble, but really you're just asking me to help you win a family power struggle." "Yes," Adrian said simply. "I am. But my family's power struggles have consequences for millions of people. Markets collapse, governments fall, wars start. If you help me stop this expansion, you'll save more lives than you can calculate. Or you're manipulating me again, telling me what I need to hear to make me compliant." Adrian's smile was sharp. "Probably both. The question is whether the manipulation matters if the outcome is something you believe in." They ate in silence, the only sound the clink of silverware against expensive plates. Outside the windows, snow fell over the Alps like the world was being erased one flake at a time. "I want to see the files," Mara finally said. "Everything you have on your family's operations. If I'm going to help you, I need to know exactly what I'm fighting." Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Tomorrow, I'll show you everything. And then you'll understand exactly how deep this goes." They developed a routine over the next week. Mornings, Mara worked on the projects Adrian assigned her, tracing money laundering networks through Caribbean shell corporations, identifying vulnerabilities in competitor banking systems, mapping the digital infrastructure his family used to move billions undetected. Afternoons, she studied the files he'd given her access to, learning exactly how old money maintained power in a digital age. Evenings, they talked. It started casually. Adrian would bring her coffee while she worked, stay for a few minutes, answer her questions about the Byzantine politics of European aristocracy. But the conversations grew longer, deeper, until she found herself looking forward to the moment he'd knock on her door with 2 glasses of whiskey and that slight smile that suggested he was thinking things he wouldn't say out loud. Tonight, they were in his library. 3 stories of books that had probably been collected over centuries, first editions and manuscripts worth more than most people's houses. A fire crackled in the fireplace, and snow pressed against the windows like it was trying to get in from the cold. "Tell me something true," Mara said, accepting the whiskey he offered. Adrian settled into the chair across from her. That's a dangerous request. You've spent the last week teaching me how your family manipulates global markets. I think I can handle dangerous. He swirled his drink, watching the amber liquid catch the firelight. What do you want to know? Why did you really save me? Not the strategic answer, not the "I needed someone with your skills" speech, the real reason. Adrian was quiet for so long Mara thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I was 23 when my family made me disappear someone, a journalist. She'd found documents about arms sales to unstable regimes. My father told me it was a test of loyalty, that this is what we do, protect the family's interests at any cost. He took a drink, his expression carefully neutral. I had her relocated instead. New identity, new life in New Zealand, enough money to start over. My father never knew. But I learned something that day. There's the world the old families show you, and then there's the world we actually control. Once you've seen behind the curtain, you can never unsee it. Mara leaned forward. So you saved me because you were tired of making people disappear. I saved you because I was tired of being the man who makes people disappear, Adrian corrected. I wanted just once to be the man who made someone stay. The admission hung between them like smoke. Mara felt something shift in her chest, not trust exactly, but the beginning of understanding. Adrian wasn't just a calculating heir playing power games. He was a man trapped in a system he despised, looking for a way out that wouldn't destroy him in the process. I'm still angry at you, she said softly, for manipulating me, for making me a target. I know, but I'm starting to understand why you did it. Adrian's eyes met hers, and there was something raw in his expression, something that looked almost like hope. Does that mean you'll stay? It means I'll work with you, Mara corrected. It doesn't mean I forgive you. Fair enough. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them, and Mara realized with a jolt that she was starting to look forward to these moments. To the intellectual sparring, the way Adrian listened like her words mattered, the rare glimpses of vulnerability he showed when he thought she wasn't paying attention. It was dangerous. Getting attached to her captor, no matter how gilded the cage, was textbook Stockholm Syndrome, but it was also starting to feel like something more complicated than that. 2 weeks into her captivity, Mara broke. It happened suddenly, the way structural collapses always do after invisible pressure builds for too long. She was on the terrace despite the snowstorm, despite the cold that bit through her inadequate jacket, because she needed air that didn't smell like money and secrets. She'd just gotten an encrypted message from her mother, forwarded through 17 proxy servers Adrian had set up. Her mother thought she was on a work assignment in Germany. Her mother was proud of her. Her mother had no idea her daughter's life had been systematically destroyed and rebuilt according to someone else's design. The tears came hot and angry, mixing with snow on her cheeks. I had a life, she said to the darkness, to the storm, to no one. Maybe not a life like this with villas and blood money and fucking original Rothkos, but it was mine. I earned it. And now it's just gone. I know. Adrian's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach, hadn't noticed him standing in the doorway until he spoke. You can't possibly know, Mara said bitterly, not turning around. You're right. I can't. He stepped onto the terrace, snow immediately catching in his dark hair. I was born into this world, into money and power and systems I didn't have to build because they'd been maintained for centuries before I existed. You're right to be angry, Mara, at me, at this situation, at everything. She finally turned to face him. Then why did you do it? If you understand how wrong this is, why manipulate me into it? Adrian moved closer, and in the stormlight, he looked younger than she'd realized. Tired, almost uncertain. Because I was desperate. Because I've been watching my family destroy things for profit my entire life, and I'm tired of being complicit. Because I needed someone who wouldn't be corrupted by the system, and the only way to guarantee that was to find someone who had no reason to trust it. He pulled off his coat, draping it over her shoulders. It was warm from his body, heavy with expensive fabric and the scent of him. I was 23 when they made me disappear that journalist, he continued quietly. 23 years old, and my father handed me a file and told me to authorize a kill order, like it was a math problem, like her life was just another variable in the family's optimization equation. "But you didn't do it," Mara said. "No, I didn't. And I've been waiting ever since for my father to find out, to punish me for my weakness. But he never has. Which means either I'm better at deception than I thought, or he already knows and he's waiting for the right moment to use it against me." Adrian stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him despite the cold. "I'm not asking you to forgive me, Mara. I'm asking you to understand that I see you. I see your brilliance, your anger, your absolute refusal to accept a cage just because it's lined with gold. And I'm asking you to use that against a system that desperately needs to be torn down." Mara looked up at him, snow catching in her eyelashes. "You're asking me to trust you." "I'm asking you to use me," Adrian corrected, "the way I've used you, except this time we both go into it with eyes open, partners instead of captor and captive." The first kiss wasn't planned. It was desperate and cold and tasted like snow and whiskey. Mara's fingers gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, and his hand tangled in her hair like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't gentle. It was two people seeking warmth in a storm, connection in isolation, something real in a world built on calculated lies. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara said, "This doesn't change anything." "I know," Adrian said. "I'm still angry." "I know. But I'll work with you because you're right. This system needs to burn." Adrian's smile was small and genuine. "Then let's burn it down together." Mara had access to almost everything. Adrian had given her credentials to his personal servers, his encrypted communications, his financial networks. She'd helped him build a shadow system outside his family's oversight, a way to communicate and move money that couldn't be traced back to the Rothschild infrastructure. She'd started to believe they were actually partners. That was her first mistake. The server room was temperature-controlled perfection, humming with the sound of machines processing millions of transactions every second. Mara was running maintenance on the security protocols she'd designed, checking for vulnerabilities, when she found the hidden directory. It was buried under 17 layers of encryption, Adrian's signature style. But she'd learned his patterns over the past month, knew how he thought, how he structured his security, where he'd hide things he didn't want found. The directory opened with the passcode she'd watched him use for his personal files. Inside, surveillance footage, financial records, personal information files. Her file was the largest. Every detail of her life was documented. Her relationships, her finances, her job performance reviews, her childhood school records. Psychological profiles analyzed her decision-making patterns, her emotional triggers, her vulnerabilities. The file creation date made her blood turn to ice, 6 months before she'd accidentally found the leaked documents. She clicked through the folders with hands that were suddenly shaking. Video surveillance from her apartment in Nairobi. Screenshots of her social media. Transcripts of her conversations with friends, somehow captured despite the encryption she'd used. Everything, the breach, the files, the assassination attempt, had been orchestrated. Adrian had been tracking her long before that flight to Zurich, studying her, calculating exactly how to turn her into the weapon he needed. But there was more. The final directory was labeled Project Calibration. Inside, detailed logs of every interaction they'd had since she'd arrived at the villa. Her emotional responses, her growing attachment, her vulnerability points, all cataloged like a psychological experiment. The most recent entry was dated 3 days ago. Subject has developed sufficient emotional attachment. Recommend transition from manipulation phase to partnership phase. Continued intimate contact advised to maintain loyalty. Physical relationship successfully established. Emotional leverage optimal. Mara felt like she'd been punched in the chest. The conversations, the vulnerability he'd shared, the kiss in the snowstorm, all of it, calculated, measured, part of a long-term manipulation designed to make her compliant. She'd fallen for every bit of it. She'd let herself believe that a man like Adrian Rothschild could actually care about someone like her, that their connection was real, that his vulnerability was genuine, that she was more than just a tool in his war against his family. She'd been so fucking stupid. Mara downloaded everything to an encrypted drive, her movements mechanical despite the fury building in her chest. She had evidence now, proof of exactly what Adrian Rothschild really was under the tailored suits and calculated charm. Time to show him what happened when you manipulated the wrong woman. She didn't bother knocking. Adrian's bedroom door crashed open under her shoulder, and he sat up immediately, some ingrained security reflex that turned him from sleeping to alert in a heartbeat. His hair was mussed from sleep, shirt half unbuttoned, and for a split second, he looked almost human. Then he saw the laptop in her hands, and his expression shifted to something colder. Calculating, the mask sliding back into place. "You set me up," Mara said, her voice deadly quiet. "The breach, the classified files, the assassination attempt in the parking garage, you staged all of it." Adrian didn't deny it. He swung his legs out of bed, moving with the same predatory grace she'd stupidly found attractive. "The files were real. The threat was real. What I manufactured was the timing and the method." "Why?" The word came out like broken glass. "Because I needed someone with your capabilities, someone unconnected to my world, someone desperate enough to accept my protection and brilliant enough to actually help me fight my family." He spoke like he was explaining market strategy, not confessing to systematically destroying her life. "I needed you, Mara." "So you made me need you." Fury made her hands shake. "You tracked me for 6 months, studied me like a lab rat, created a situation that would force me into dependence. You manipulated every single moment we've shared." "Yes?" The admission was simple, honest in a way that made everything worse. "I manipulated the circumstances. I calculated the approach. I manufactured the crisis. That's what people like me do, Mara. We identify what we need and we acquire it." Mara's laugh was bitter enough to strip paint. "And the vulnerability? The stories about the journalist you saved? The kiss in the snowstorm? Let me guess. All part of Project Calibration?" Something flickered across Adrian's face. Regret, maybe. Or just annoyance that she'd found his documentation. "That file is 8 weeks old. It was started when you were still just an asset I was cultivating." "So it was all fake." "It started fake." His composure cracked, voice rising for the first time since she'd known him. "Yes, I documented your psychological profile. Yes, I calculated how to earn your trust. Yes, I planned every interaction in those first weeks. That's what I was trained to do since I could walk, identify vulnerabilities and exploit them." He crossed the room, stopping close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "But somewhere between the chess games and the late-night conversations and you falling asleep on my shoulder while working on encryption keys, it stopped being a game." "I don't believe you. I don't expect you to." Adrian's jaw tightened. "But look at the dates on those files, Mara. The last entry in Project Calibration is 8 weeks old. There's been nothing added since the night you kissed me in the snow. Because that's when I stopped documenting, when I stopped calculating, when I realized I'd made a critical tactical error." "Which was?" "I started caring about the asset." Mara wanted to throw the laptop at his perfect face. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to manipulate someone into falling for you and then claim it's real when they find out." "You're right." Adrian's voice dropped to something raw. "I don't. But I'm going to tell you the truth anyway. Even though you have no reason to believe it, I invoked right of territory for you. Do you understand what that means? I put you before family. In my world, that's not strategy. It's suicide. I've made myself vulnerable for you, Mara. I've given my family ammunition to destroy me. Because somewhere in all this calculation and manipulation, I fell for you." Too little, too late. Mara held up the encrypted drive. "I have copies of everything now. Your family's operations, your personal manipulations, every dirty secret you've been hiding, and I'm walking out that door with all of it. I know. The garage is unlocked. The car has a full tank. Your passport is in the glove compartment along with enough cash to disappear anywhere in the world." Adrian stepped back, hands raised. "If you want to leave, leave. I won't stop you. I'm done manipulating you, Mara. The choice is yours." It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like everything was crumbling. Mara didn't leave that night. She told herself it was strategic, better to wait until morning, better to plan her escape carefully. But really, she just couldn't force herself to drive away. Not when Adrian had looked at her with something that almost seemed like genuine devastation. Not when part of her, the stupid, naive part she was furious with, wanted to believe him. She was still debating when Adrian's father called. Mara was in the guest suite when she heard Adrian's voice rise, an actual emotional response which was so uncharacteristic it made her pause. She crept into the hallway, found him in his study on a video call with people who looked like they'd been born rich and gotten meaner with age. Lord Edmund Rothshield sat at the center of the screen, silver-haired, steel-eyed, radiating the kind of power that came from centuries of building empires. Beside him, Aunt Catherine, whose sharp features suggested she'd smile while ordering executions, and Marcus, Adrian's cousin, who looked like an AI had been asked to generate entitled aristocrat. "The girl is a liability," Lord Edmund was saying, his British accent clipped and cold. "The family has authorized Protocol 7. Mara felt her blood turn to ice. She'd read about Protocol 7 in the files Adrian had given her access to. Permanent disappearance, no body, no investigation, no loose ends. They'd authorized her death. "I've claimed responsibility for the situation," Adrian said, his voice knife-sharp with control. "She stays under my supervision." Aunt Catherine leaned forward. "You're letting sentiment cloud your judgment, Adrian. She's seen too much. Known associates of compromised assets must be." "She's not an associate." Adrian's interruption was absolute. "She's mine. I've invoked right of territory. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally." The silence on the call was profound. "You can't be serious," Marcus finally said, disbelief evident in his tone. "You're protecting some African hacker? Invoking ancient family law for a girl you've known for 6 weeks?" "I'm protecting my asset, my operation, my decision." Adrian's voice could have cut diamond. "I've claimed her under my direct authority. Family Charter, Section 7, Paragraph 3. Any action against her is an action against me." Lord Edmund studied his son through the screen. "You realize what this means. If she becomes a problem, you become a problem. You're tying your fate to hers." "I'm aware. Then the matter is settled. For now." Lord Edmund's smile was cold enough to cause frostbite. "But understand, Adrian, you've just painted a target on your own back. If the girl proves to be the liability we suspect, we won't just eliminate her. We'll eliminate the judgment error that allowed her to become a threat." The call ended. Adrian sat in silence for a long moment, then poured himself a drink with hands that shook slightly, the first time Mara had seen him rattled. She stepped into the doorway. "What's Protocol 7? Adrian didn't flinch, didn't look surprised that she'd been listening. "Permanent? Disappearance. No body, no investigation, no loose ends. It's what we do to problems we can't solve cleanly." "And right of territory?" "An old provision in the family charter. It means I've claimed you as part of my household, under my direct protection. It also means—" He finally looked at her. "It means my family now sees you as my weakness, and they will absolutely try to exploit that." Mara's anger from the previous night hadn't disappeared, but it was suddenly complicated by the realization that Adrian had just made himself vulnerable for her. Whether it was calculated strategy or genuine emotion didn't matter. The result was the same. He'd put himself between her and his family. "Why?" she asked quietly. Adrian took a long drink. "Because I'm tired of being the man who makes people disappear, even if it cost me everything." She found him in the wine cellar that night. The underground room was all stone and darkness, lined with bottles worth more than houses. Adrian was sitting on the cold floor, drinking a Romanée Conti straight from the bottle, 50,000 wine consumed like cheap beer. "That's probably criminal," Mara said from the doorway. "Add it to the list." Adrian didn't look up. "I'm already facing potential family sanctions for protecting you. Might as well vandalize the wine collection while I'm at it." Mara sat beside him on the floor, the cold seeping through her clothes. "Your family really would kill me." "Yes." No hesitation, no comfort in the answer. Just truth. Protocol 7 is designed for exactly this scenario. Someone outside the family who knows too much, presents too much risk, and whose disappearance wouldn't trigger investigations we can't control. "And you stopped them by claiming ownership of me, like I'm property." "I stopped them by putting myself between you and the bullet," Adrian corrected. He handed her the bottle. Right of territory is medieval and sexist and everything you probably hate, but it's also legally binding within family law. As long as you're claimed under my protection, killing you means declaring war on me, and the family isn't quite ready for that civil war. Yet, Mara took a drink. The wine tasted like liquid gold and bad decisions. So you've bought me time. I've bought us both time. To figure out how to bring down their digital expansion plans, to gather enough evidence that even the family can't ignore, he trailed off. To what? Adrian looked at her fully, and she saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Genuine uncertainty. To prove to you that somewhere in all my calculations and manipulations, something real happened. Something I wasn't planning for and don't know how to handle. You're a Rothschild. You've been trained to handle everything. Not you. The admission was quiet, raw. I know how to acquire assets, control situations, manipulate outcomes, but I was never trained for what to do when the asset becomes more important than the objective, when the manipulation becomes complicated by actual feelings, when the control I've built my entire life around suddenly feels like a cage I want to escape. Mara studied him. This man who'd systematically destroyed her life to remake her into his weapon. This man who'd just risked everything to protect her. These two versions of Adrian Rothschild, and she couldn't reconcile them into a single coherent person. Tell me something true, she said. Not strategic, not calculated, just true. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, then, I'm so fucking tired of being the good son, of protecting a system I despise, of knowing exactly how much damage my family causes and keeping silent for the sake of dynasty and legacy and old money tradition. I thought if I brought you into my world, I could use your anger, your refusal to accept corruption, to finally tear it down from the inside. He took another drink. But now I'm realizing I didn't just want your skills. I wanted your fearlessness, your inability to stay silent when you see injustice, your absolute refusal to play the game by their rules. I wanted you. Past tense? Mara asked softly. Present. Present tense. Very present. Adrian's laugh was self-deprecating. I wanted you. I want you. I will probably want you even after you walk out of here with all my secrets and burn my life down on your way out. Because apparently I'm capable of catastrophically bad judgment when it comes to brilliant women who see through all my bullshit. The vulnerability was disarming. Mara wanted to stay angry, wanted to maintain her righteous fury, but it was hard when he was sitting on a cold cellar floor, drinking 50,000 wine and looking at her like she was the most complicated puzzle he'd ever tried to solve. I don't trust you, she said. I know, I haven't earned it, but I'm not leaving, not yet. Adrian's eyes met hers. Why not? Because whether you manipulated me into it or not, I want the same thing you do. I want to burn this corrupt system down, and I'm smart enough to know I can't do it without your resources and protection. She took another drink of wine. Also because part of me, the stupid, naive part, wants to believe you when you say something real happened between us. It did. I don't know if I believe that yet, but I'm willing to stick around long enough to find out. Mara stood, brushing dust off her clothes. But if I find out you're still manipulating me, if I find one more hidden file, one more calculated strategy, one more piece of evidence that this is all still a game to you, I will destroy you so thoroughly that your family will remember me as the woman who ended the Rothschild dynasty. Adrian stood as well, and his smile was small and genuine. Fair enough. Though I should mention, that threat makes me want you even more. Apparently, I have terrible taste in partners. Apparently. Mara turned to leave, then looked back. What happens now? Now we prepare for war. My family is voting in 2 months on digital expansion. We have 60 days to gather enough evidence to stop them. 60 days to build our case, 60 days to either succeed or die trying. Dramatic. Accurate. Adrian held out the wine bottle. One more drink before we start saving the world? Mara took the bottle, and their fingers brushed in the exchange. One more drink before we start burning it down. 3 days later, Mara made her decision. She'd gathered everything she needed: copies of the Rothschild family operations, evidence of market manipulation, proof of political corruption spanning decades. She'd encrypted it all, sent backups to 3 different secure servers, and prepared a dead man's switch that would release everything if something happened to her. She wasn't naive enough to trust Adrian completely, but she also wasn't stupid enough to run without a plan. The garage was dark, lit only by motion sensor lights that clicked on as she entered. 6 cars, each worth more than most people's houses. She headed for the Audi, something fast but not flashy, something that wouldn't attract attention on the highway. The keys were exactly where Adrian had said they'd be. Her passport was in the glove compartment, 50,000 pounds in cash, multiple currencies, all unmarked bills, everything she needed to disappear. Her hand hovered over the ignition. Second thoughts? Adrian's voice came from behind her. Mara didn't jump. She'd expected him to appear. He'd been trained by the best security apparatus money could buy. Of course, he knew she was trying to leave. "You said you wouldn't stop me," she said without turning around. "I won't." Adrian stayed in the doorway, keeping his distance. "But I'm hoping you'll stop yourself." "Why should I?" Mara finally faced him. He was in a dark t-shirt and jeans. No designer suit, no aristocratic armor. Just a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Because if you run now, with that information, you'll start a war you're not prepared to fight. Financial markets will collapse, governments will fall, my family will burn the world to find you, and you'll spend the rest of your life running from people who have unlimited resources and no conscience. So I should stay in my gilded cage? Keep playing your games?" "No." Adrian stepped into the garage but stopped several feet away. "You should stay because you're brilliant enough to see the bigger picture. Because tearing down my family's empire is more complicated than releasing files and watching things burn. Because you want to do this right, with enough evidence and public support that the system actually changes instead of just reshuffling the same corrupt power structures." He gestured to the car. "Or I'm wrong. Maybe I'm still manipulating you. Maybe everything I've said is calculated to keep you here. The garage door's unlocked. The car has a full tank. You have cash and passport and complete freedom to leave. The choice is entirely yours, Mara. For the first time since we met, I'm not trying to control the outcome." Mara searched his face for signs of deception, found only exhaustion and what looked like genuine resignation. "What happens if I stay?" she asked. "We work together. As actual partners, you have full access to everything. No more hidden files, no more surveillance, no more calculated manipulation. We build a case against my family that's so airtight they can't dismiss it. We leak it through channels that protect you while still causing maximum damage. We burn it down together," Mara finished, "from the inside." "Yes." She stood there for a long moment, keys in hand, freedom within reach. Every logical instinct told her to drive away, to take the evidence and run as far as she could. But she'd never been good at listening to logical instincts. "I want complete access," she said, "to everything. No more secrets." "Agreed. And separate bedrooms, professional boundaries until I decide otherwise." "Agreed. And if I find out you're still manipulating me, you'll destroy me. I know. The threat still stands." Mara set the keys back on the console, closed the glove compartment, turned away from the car and toward Adrian. "I'm not staying because I trust you," she said clearly. "I'm staying because I want to finish what we started, because burning down corrupt systems is more important than my personal feelings about being manipulated, because I'm smart enough to know I need your resources even if I hate how I got access to them." Adrian nodded slowly. "Acceptable. But Adrian?" Mara stepped closer. "The next time you lie to me, about anything, I walk. No explanations, no second chances. We do this as equals, or we don't do this at all." "Equals," Adrian agreed. "Partners." They stood in the dim garage, snow beginning to fall outside, and Mara wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or the smartest decision. Probably both. "Show me everything," she said, "and then we start planning how to take your family down." Adrian's smile was grim. "This is going to get very ugly." "Good. I'm in the mood for ugly." The dress cost more than Mara had made in a year. Elie Saab couture, midnight blue, with a neckline that suggested sophistication and a slit that suggested danger. Harry Winston diamonds at her throat and wrists, real ones, insured for more than most people's houses, hair and makeup done by professionals who'd flown in from Paris specifically for this event. Mara looked at her reflection and barely recognized herself. "You look terrifying," Adrian said from the doorway of her suite. He was in Tom Ford formal wear, looking every inch the aristocratic heir he'd been born to be. "In the best possible way." "I look like arm candy for a billionaire," Mara corrected, adjusting the custom earpiece hidden under her hair, "which is exactly what we want them to think." The plan was simple in theory. Adrian would take her to the family's winter gala in London, a gathering of old money and older secrets where deals worth billions were made over champagne and passive-aggressive small talk. While Adrian kept his family distracted, Mara would slip away to the estate's private library and hack into their main server. They'd spent 6 weeks preparing, mapping the estate's security, identifying vulnerabilities, building the custom hardware she'd need to breach a system designed to be impenetrable. One night, 12 minutes, download everything and get out before anyone noticed. Simple. Except nothing involving the Rothschild family was ever simple. The London estate was obscene even by obscene standards. Mayfair address, Georgian architecture, enough rooms that entire families could live there and never see each other. The winter gala was held in the main ballroom, a space of crystal chandeliers and old money excess where people discussed market manipulation like they were discussing the weather. Adrian kept his hand at the small of her back as they entered, a possession claim that made several heads turn. Mara felt the stares, heard the whispered conversations, saw the barely concealed racism wrapped in polite British reserve. She'd expected that, had prepared for it, but expecting prejudice and experiencing it were different things. "Adrian," Lord Edmund approached with the kind of smile that made Mara's instincts scream danger. "And you must be Miss Najeri. We've heard so much about you." "All terrible, I'm sure," Mara said with a smile that showed teeth. Lord Edmund's laugh was polished enough to cut glass. "On the contrary, Adrian tells us you've been instrumental in our digital security assessments, though I must admit bringing you here is unexpected." "Mara is my business partner and advisor," Adrian said smoothly. "I thought it was time the family met her properly." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Aunt Catherine materialized from the crowd, her expression carefully neutral in a way that suggested she was absolutely furious underneath. "How modern of you, Adrian," she said, voice dripping with false warmth. "Though perhaps we should discuss what's appropriate for family gatherings, in private." Adrian's hand tightened slightly on Mara's back. "Whatever you need to say to me can be said in front of Mara. She's cleared for all family business." The battle lines were drawn. Mara saw it in the way Lord Edmund's eyes hardened, the way Marcus appeared at his father's shoulder like a loyal attack dog, the way other family members began to cluster in groups that suggested they were choosing sides. Adrian had just publicly claimed her as an equal, in front of the entire Rothschild dynasty. It was either the bravest thing she'd ever seen, or the most strategically stupid. "The library," Adrian murmured in her ear, quiet enough that no one else could hear. 15 minutes. I'll keep them occupied." Mara nodded slightly and let herself be led deeper into the party, playing the role of decorative companion while mentally counting down the minutes until she could disappear into the shadows and do what she did best: burn everything down from the inside. The library was exactly where Adrian had told her it would be. 3rd floor, east wing, behind a door that looked like decorative paneling, but opened with a biometric scan she'd hacked using a fingerprint mold she'd made from Adrian's whiskey glass 3 weeks ago. The room beyond was dark except for the blue glow of servers humming along one wall. Mara set up quickly, fingers flying over her custom-built device. 17 firewalls to breach, each one more sophisticated than the last. She'd practiced this exact sequence 100 times in the villa, but theory and reality were different when your hands were shaking from adrenaline and every sound in the old house made you jump. 5 minutes. The first firewall crumbled like paper. 7 minutes. The second and third fell simultaneously. 10 minutes. She was inside the main directory, downloading encrypted files faster than she could read their titles. Financial records, political blackmail, military contracts, everything they needed to prove that the Rothschild family wasn't just wealthy, They were actively destabilizing markets for profit. 11 minutes. She found the file on digital expansion plans, cryptocurrency manipulation, cyber warfare operations, plans to destabilize emerging African markets to maintain European financial dominance. It was worse than they'd suspected, more comprehensive, more calculated. And then she found the file she wasn't looking for. Project Calibration. Her name was on it. Mara's heart stuttered. She'd seen this file before, had confronted Adrian about it 6 weeks ago. But this file was different, updated. Recent entries dated as recently as 3 days ago. She opened it with hands that had started shaking. Inside, every interaction they'd had since she'd found the original files was documented. Her emotional responses cataloged, her growing attachment analyzed, her vulnerability points mapped like military targets. Week 8. Subject's anger regarding initial manipulation has decreased by 40%. Emotional attachment indicators show consistent increase. Recommend maintaining current strategy of limited physical intimacy and increased vulnerability displays. Week 10. Subject's decision to remain demonstrates successful transition from coerced compliance to voluntary partnership. Emotional leverage at optimal levels. Consider accelerating physical relationship to strengthen loyalty bonds. Week 12. Subject has fully integrated into operational planning, displays protective behaviors and genuine concern for primary operatives' well-being. Emotional attachment sufficient for long-term asset retention. Recommend continued cultivation through strategic vulnerability and calculated honesty. The most recent entry was dated 3 days ago. Final assessment. Subject successfully manipulated from initial acquisition through emotional attachment to operational partnership. Recommend maintaining current relationship dynamics through gala operation. Subject's emotional investment ensures loyalty even in high-risk scenarios. Asset optimization complete. Mara felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Every conversation, every moment of vulnerability. Every time she'd thought something real was happening between them, all of it documented, analyzed, optimized. He'd never stopped manipulating her. He'd just gotten better at hiding it. The download was still running, 5 more minutes until she had everything they needed. Mara blinked back tears that were half fury, half heartbreak, and forced herself to focus on the mission. Deal with the betrayal later. Get the evidence now. The door opened behind her. Find anything interesting? Adrian's voice was quiet. Mara didn't turn around, couldn't turn around, because if she looked at him right now, she'd either kill him or break down completely. You're still documenting me, she said, her voice flat. Still analyzing, still treating me like a fucking psychological experiment you're running for your thesis on how to manipulate smart women into compliance. Silence. Then, that file is operational security. Standard protocol for any asset involvement in family operations. I'm not an asset. You said I was a partner. You're both. Adrian moved closer, and she could hear the frustration in his voice. Mara, you have to understand. My family requires documentation on anyone involved in sensitive operations. It's not personal, it's procedure? Mara whirled to face him, and she saw him actually flinch at whatever he saw in her expression. Is that what you're going to tell me? That psychologically profiling the woman you're sleeping with is just standard Rothschild procedure? We're not sleeping together. Because I wouldn't let you. Because I had boundaries you had to respect if you wanted to keep me around long enough to use me for whatever the fuck this operation really is. She grabbed the laptop, showed him the screen. Week 12. Recommend maintaining current relationship dynamics. You calculated when to kiss me. You strategized vulnerability. Everything, every single moment I thought was real, was just you following your optimization playbook. Adrian's jaw tightened. That's not fair. What's not fair is being manipulated by someone who claims to care about you while documenting your emotional responses like you're a rat in a maze. The download finished. Mara yanked the device free, shoved everything into the clutch purse that cost more than her old car. I got what we came for. I'm leaving. Mara, don't. She held up a hand. Don't try to explain. Don't try to justify it. Don't tell me one more calculated thing designed to make me stay. I'm done, Adrian. We'll finish this operation because taking down your family is more important than, My hurt feelings. But us. There is no us. There never was. Just you and your asset. She pushed past him, and he let her go. Didn't try to stop her, didn't try to argue. Just stood there in the dark library looking like she'd actually hurt him. Good. She hoped it burned. The party was still going when Mara got back to Adrian's suite. She could hear laughter and music from multiple floors below, the sounds of old money celebrating their continued dominance. She wanted to burn the entire building down. Instead, she changed out of the designer dress into her own clothes, jeans and a hoodie she'd packed specifically for this moment, when the disguise came off and she could be herself again. She was packing the laptop and encrypted drives when Adrian's suite door opened. Not Adrian. Lord Edmund. Miss and Jerry. He entered without invitation, followed by Aunt Catherine and Marcus, a show of force dressed in formal wear. We need to talk about your future with this family. Mara straightened, instincts screaming danger. I don't have a future with your family. I'm Adrian's consultant. That's it. Is it? Lord Edmund settled into a chair like he owned the room, which he probably did. Because my son seems to have developed an inconvenient attachment to you, one that's interfering with his judgment. That's not my problem. Oh, but it is. Aunt Catherine's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Adrian has invoked right of territory for you. Do you know what that means? It means he's protected me from your Protocol 7 bullshit. It means he's tied his fate to yours. Marcus leaned against the door, blocking her exit. If you become a problem, he becomes a problem, and we're here to determine whether you're worth the risk he's taking. Mara's hand inched toward the laptop bag. I don't answer to you. You do if you want to keep breathing. Lord Edmund's voice was pleasant, conversational. We know you hacked our systems tonight, Miss and Jerry. We know you downloaded classified operational files. The question is what you plan to do with that information. Her blood ran cold. You knew? Of course we knew. The security breach alerts came through 20 seconds after you initiated the download. We let you finish because we wanted to see what you'd take, what Adrian had convinced you to steal for him. The trap snapped shut around her. This whole operation, the gala, the library, the downloads, had been monitored the entire time. Where is Adrian? Mara demanded. Downstairs, explaining to the family council why we shouldn't immediately activate Protocol 7 for both of you. Aunt Catherine examined her manicure. He's arguing that you're an asset, that you can be controlled, that your loyalty can be secured through continued manipulation. That's not, isn't it? Lord Edmund stood, moving closer with predatory intent. Adrian has been running a long-term cultivation operation on you for 8 months. Successfully, I might add. You've gone from adversary to ally to, what would you call it? Lover? Partner? Asset who thinks she's something more? Mara felt the walls closing in. I want to see him, now. I'm afraid that's not possible. Adrian is currently being disciplined for involving an outsider in family operations without proper authorization. You, Miss and Jerry, are about to make a choice. You can give us the files you downloaded and accept a generous financial settlement to disappear from Adrian's life. Or you can refuse, and we activate Protocol 7 for both of you. You're bluffing. You won't kill your own heir. Won't we? Marcus's smile was cold. Adrian knew the rules when he chose to protect you. Every family member understands that loyalty to the dynasty supersedes individual attachments. If he's willing to compromise family security for sentiment, he's already proven himself unfit to carry the Rothshield name. The door opened. Adrian entered and Mara's heart dropped. He had a black eye, split lip. His shirt was torn, and he moved carefully like his ribs were damaged. They'd beaten him. His own family had beaten him. Mara, his voice was rough, don't give them anything. Shut up, Adrian. Lord Edmund's tone could have frozen hell. You've said quite enough already. What did they do to you? Mara demanded. Family discipline, Adrian said, wincing as he moved. Standard consequence for operational security breaches. It's fine. It wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. Lord Edmund turned to Mara. So what will it be, Miss and Jerry? The files and your freedom, or stubborn loyalty to a man who's been manipulating you since the day you met? Mara looked at Adrian. At the man who'd systematically destroyed her life to remake her into his weapon. The man who'd never stopped documenting her, analyzing her, treating her like a variable in his equations. The man who'd just been beaten by his own family for protecting her. The files are encrypted, Mara said slowly. Multiple layers, quantum-resistant algorithms. Even if you kill me, you won't be able to access them. Then decrypt them. No. The single word hung in the air like a bomb. Lord Edmund's expression hardened. Then you've chosen poorly. Wait. Adrian stepped forward despite the obvious pain it caused. I have a counter-proposal. Bring her in. Silence. Excuse me? Aunt Catherine's voice was dangerously quiet. Bring her into family operations. Make her director of digital ethics and security. She's already proven she can breach our systems. Imagine what she could do if she was working for us instead of against us. You want to recruit the woman who just stole our classified files? Marcus's laugh was bitter. Have you lost your mind? She breached systems designed by the best security contractors money can buy. She outsmarted surveillance we've been perfecting for decades. She's exactly the kind of person we should be employing. Adrian's voice was steady despite the blood on his face. Make her useful instead of eliminating her. It's better business. Lord Edmund studied his son for a long moment. And you think she'll agree to work for us after everything? I think she'll work with us, Adrian said, under specific conditions. Complete autonomy over digital ethics oversight, direct reporting structure to me, outside family hierarchy, and protection from Protocol 7, permanently. He finally looked at Mara. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to be pragmatic. You wanted to change the system from inside. This is your chance. Mara felt like she was drowning. Every option was terrible. Trust the family that wanted her dead, trust Adrian, who'd never stopped manipulating her, run, and spend the rest of her life being hunted? I need to think, she said. You have 30 seconds, Lord Edmund said. Then we vote. The family voted. 3 in favor, 2 against. Mara was granted provisional alliance status, contingent on her accepting the position of Director of Digital Ethics and Security, signing a 20-page contract that basically sold her soul to the Rothschild dynasty and proving her loyalty over a 6-month trial period. She signed, because the alternative was death. They returned to the Swiss villa in silence. Adrian's injuries were being treated by a private physician his family had sent, someone who asked no questions and documented nothing. Mara sat in the library with a glass of whiskey she wasn't drinking and tried to process what her life had become. She'd gone from independent analyst to captive to asset to, what? Employee of the empire she'd wanted to destroy? Partner to a man who couldn't stop manipulating her even when it cost him everything. I'm sorry, Adrian's voice came from the doorway. He looked like hell, bruised, bandaged, moving like everything hurt. For which part? Mara asked without looking at him. Manipulating me for 8 months? Never stopping the documentation even when you claimed things were real? Or getting me trapped in a contract with your psychotic family? All of it. None of it. I don't know anymore. Adrian lowered himself carefully into a chair. The files you found, the ones showing I was still documenting you, those were required reports for family oversight. Every operation requires psychological assessments of all involved parties. It's not personal, it's, if you say procedure one more time, I'm going to throw this whiskey at your head. He smiled slightly, then winced because it pulled his split lip. Fair. They sat in silence. Outside, snow fell over the Alps like the world was trying to bury them. Why did you do it? Mara finally asked. At the gala, when your family was ready to activate Protocol 7 for both of us, why did you argue to bring me in instead of just letting me go? Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then, because I'm selfish, because I wanted you alive more than I wanted you free, because somewhere in all my calculations and manipulations and operational security protocols, I fell for you, and I couldn't let them kill you, even if it meant trapping you in the same system that's trapped me my entire life. That's not love, Mara said. That's possession. I know, Adrian's voice was raw. I know the difference intellectually, but I've never learned how to do the former without the latter. It's how I was raised, how I was trained. People are assets to be acquired, maintained, protected. I don't know how to love someone without trying to control the circumstances around them. Then learn, Mara finally looked at him. Because I'm not staying in this villa, in this situation, in this half-relationship where I never know if your vulnerability is real or calculated. I'm going to work for your family because I don't have a choice. But you and me? We're done. Professional relationship only, nothing personal. I understand. Do you? Mara stood, moving to the window. Because I don't think you do. I don't think you understand that you can't manipulate someone into loving you. You can't document someone into trusting you. You can't strategize real human connection, Adrian. That's not how it works. Then teach me how it works. Adrian stood as well, moving closer despite the obvious pain. I'm serious. I don't know how to be in a relationship without trying to control it. I don't know how to be vulnerable without calculating the strategic benefit. I don't know how to love someone without treating them like a problem to be solved, but I want to learn. For you. Mara felt tears burning her eyes and refused to let them fall. You can't just decide to change because it's strategically beneficial to keep me around. I'm not changing to keep you around. I'm changing because you were right about everything. I am a monster. I do treat people like chess pieces. I do manipulate circumstances instead of building genuine connections. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being the man my family made me. I want to be someone better, someone who deserves you instead of someone who traps you. Pretty words, but I've heard your pretty words before. I know, so I'm not going to ask you to believe them. Adrian pulled a folder from his jacket, winced at the movement. These are the contracts I signed with my family, including one provision you didn't see. I've given you kill switch access to all Rothschield financial data, every account, every operation, every secret we've been hiding for centuries. If I ever manipulate you again, if I ever document you without consent, if I ever treat you as anything less than an equal partner, you have the authority and access to burn my family's empire to the ground. Mara took the folder with shaking hands. Inside, legal documents, access codes, authentication protocols, everything she'd need to destroy the Rothschild dynasty completely. You're giving me the nuclear option, she said slowly. I'm giving you power over me. Real power, not the illusion I've been offering. If you stay, it's because you choose to. If you leave with the ability to ensure I can never hurt anyone else the way I hurt you. Adrian met her eyes. I can't prove I've changed, but I can give you the tools to destroy me if I don't. That's all I have left to offer. Mara stared at the documents, at the man who'd systematically demolished her life and rebuilt it according to his design, at the future she'd never wanted and couldn't escape. I'm taking these, she said finally, and I'm working as director of digital ethics, but separate rooms, professional boundaries, and if I catch you calculating our relationship one more time, I'm dead, I know. Adrian's smile was small and exhausted. Thank you for not leaving, for giving me the chance to be better. Don't thank me yet. You haven't proven you can actually change. Mara moved toward the door, then paused. And Adrian, the next time your family beats you for protecting me, don't. I'm not worth dying for. That's where you're wrong, Adrian said quietly. You're the only thing I've ever met that might actually be worth dying for. Mara left before she could do something stupid like believe him. The director of digital ethics and security had an office with a view. Mara had insisted on it, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Alps, a space that was entirely hers, decorated with photos from Nairobi and tech equipment she'd selected herself. No designer furniture chosen by someone else. No calculated aesthetic meant to make her feel belonging she hadn't earned. Just her space, her rules. 6 months into the contract, and she'd systematically torn through Rothschild digital operations like a hurricane, implemented transparency protocols that made the family's financial advisors scream, created accountability structures that exposed 3 separate embezzlement schemes, redirected investments toward sustainable African tech infrastructure despite furious pushback from old guard family members. She'd made the system better. Not perfect, never perfect, but better than it had been. And Adrian had kept his distance, separate rooms, professional boundaries. He'd stopped documenting her. She'd confirmed that by hacking his personal servers monthly because she trusted him about as far as she could throw the Alps. Their interactions were cordial, efficient, limited to work discussions and quarterly reviews. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like living in a house with a ghost. Morning. Adrian appeared in her doorway with coffee, black with cinnamon, the way she liked it. 6 months of the same routine, never varying, never pushing for more. Morning, Mara said, accepting the cup. What's on the agenda? Quarterly board meeting. My father wants updates on the digital ethics initiatives. Adrian's tone was professionally neutral. He's still furious about the African infrastructure investments, by the way. Good, let him stay. Furious. Mara pulled up the presentation she'd been preparing. I've got 12 case studies showing how those investments are actually increasing long-term profitability while reducing exploitation. He can be angry all he wants, but the numbers don't lie. He's going to argue that profit isn't the point. Then I'll remind him that I have enough dirt on the family to trigger international investigations, and maybe he should focus on being grateful I'm using my position to reform instead of destroy. Adrian's smile was small and genuine. You're terrifying when you do that. Do what? Threaten to dismantle centuries of dynasty building with the same tone most people use to discuss their lunch order. Mara shrugged. It's a gift. They worked through the morning in companionable silence. This was their dynamic now. Professional respect without personal connection. It was safe, it was manageable, it was slowly killing something in her chest that she refused to examine too closely. The winter gala came around again, and this time Mara attended as official family business. No elaborate disguises, no hacking operations, just the director of digital ethics in an understated black suit, there to present quarterly reports and prove she was worth the controversial position she'd fought for. The family was still suspicious of her. Lord Edmund watched her like a hawk looking for weakness. Aunt Catherine made passive-aggressive comments about modern appointments. Marcus treated her with barely concealed hostility, but they couldn't deny her results. The Digital Ethics Division had saved them from 3 separate potential scandals, increased operational efficiency by 30%, and actually improved their public image among younger investors who cared about corporate responsibility. Mara was making them money while making them better. It was the only currency that mattered to the Rothschield family. Impressive presentation, Lord Edmund said during the dinner service, though I notice you've been quite aggressive in restructuring our African operations. Aggressive restructuring is my job description, Mara said, not backing down. You hired me to clean up digital ethics violations. African exploitation was the biggest violation on the books. We prefer to call it strategic market positioning. I'm sure you do. I prefer to call it what it is, neo-colonial bullshit that's both morally reprehensible and increasingly unprofitable as African markets develop their own tech infrastructure. Silence around the table. Then Lord Edmund laughed, a genuine sound that suggested he'd actually been tested and found it refreshing. You're quite something, Miss Njeri. I can see why Adrian was willing to burn bridges to keep you. I'm not a possession to be kept, Mara corrected. I'm an employee doing her job. Are you? Aunt Catherine's voice was sharp. Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a woman who's been sleeping in the guest wing for 6 months, while Adrian pines after you like a lovesick boy. My living arrangements and Adrian's emotional state are not appropriate dinner conversation. Everything is appropriate dinner conversation when it affects family dynamics. Marcus leaned forward. You have him tied in knots, Miss Njeri. It's affecting his judgment, his focus, his ability to properly represent family interests. Mara's laugh was sharp. Adrian's judgment was compromised long before I entered the picture. He's been questioning family methods for years. I'm just the excuse you're all using to avoid addressing the real problem. This family's operational ethics are a fucking disaster, and someone needs to fix it before it causes actual consequences. She stood, no longer caring about protocol. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Enjoy your dinner and your denial. She made it to the terrace before the shaking started. Adrian found her in the gardens 20 minutes later. That was quite the exit, he said, offering his jacket against the winter cold. Mara took it without comment. Your family's exhausting. I know. I've been dealing with them for 34 years. Adrian leaned against the stone balustrade beside her. For what it's worth, you were right about everything you said in there. I know I was right. Doesn't make it easier to say. They stood in silence, London spreading out below them like a carpet of lights and old secrets. Do you ever regret it? Adrian asked quietly. Staying, working for us, building something better instead of just burning it all down? Mara considered. Yes and no. I regret that I don't have the freedom I used to have, that every decision I make is weighed against family politics and power structures, that I can't just walk away when things get hard. But I've changed more in 6 months working inside the system than I could have in years fighting from outside. I've redirected millions toward projects that actually help people. I've created accountability where none existed. I've proven that reform is possible, even in the most corrupt structures. She looked at him finally. I regret how I got here. I don't regret what I'm doing with the position. Adrian nodded slowly. And us? Do you regret that? There is no us. There's my job and your inheritance and a bunch of professional boundaries we both respect. Mara. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me you've changed. Don't tell me you've learned how to be better. Don't give me another calculated speech designed to make me believe in something that's probably still just strategy dressed up as emotion. What if it's not strategy? Adrian's voice was raw in a way she'd rarely heard. What if I genuinely have no idea what I'm doing? What if the last 6 months of professional distance have been torture, and I've been respecting your boundaries because it's what you asked for, but every day I wake up and wish things were different? Then that's your problem to solve, not mine. Fair. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? And you can decide if it's strategic or honest, and either way is fine. What? I miss you, not the asset I was cultivating or the partner I was manipulating. I miss you. The woman who threatens to destroy dynasties over dinner, who reorganizes centuries-old power structures and then goes home and watches terrible crime documentaries, who makes me feel like maybe I could be someone worth knowing instead of just someone worth fearing. Mara's chest hurt. That's not fair. I know, nothing about this situation is fair, but I wanted you to know anyway. Adrian straightened, moving back toward the house. Take your time. I'll make excuses for why you're not at dessert. He left her in the gardens, and Mara stood there trying to figure out when exactly she'd started believing him. The contract renewal came up at the 6-month mark. Mara had options now. The kill switch access Adrian had given her meant she could leave with enough leverage to ensure her safety. She'd proven her value. Other families would hire her in a heartbeat, offering better pay and less complicated emotional entanglements. She could walk away, finally, with power and resources and the freedom she'd lost that night in the Zurich parking garage. She stood on the villa terrace, the same terrace where Adrian had first kissed her in the snow, where she'd broken down and he'd shown her the first crack in his calculated facade. The Alps spread out below her, unchanged and unchanging, while everything else in her life had transformed beyond recognition. Penny for your thoughts? Adrian's voice came from behind her. Or should I offer something more appropriate? 20 million euros for your thoughts? Mara laughed despite herself. Your family's getting funnier. Not really. You're just getting better at seeing the absurdity. He joined her at the railing, maintaining respectful distance. Contract renewal is tomorrow. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, Mara admitted. Part of me wants to take the kill switch and run. Start over somewhere your family can't reach. Build something that's entirely mine. That's reasonable. But another part of me, she trailed off. Another part? Another part knows that I've built something here, changed things in ways that matter, made a system better that would have stayed corrupt without intervention. She looked at him finally. And another part of me is tired of running from complicated situations just because they're complicated. Adrian was very still. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm going to renew the contract, but with new terms. I want full control over digital ethics for all family operations, not just the Swiss division. I want a seat at the board meetings, and I want, she took a breath, I want you to stop sleeping in the guest wing. Mara, I'm not saying I trust you completely. I'm not saying I've forgiven you for how this started. But I'm saying I'm tired of pretending I don't care, that I don't look forward to our morning coffee routine. That I don't notice when you're in pain because your family disciplined you again for supporting my initiatives. That I don't, she felt her voice crack slightly, that I don't miss you too. Adrian turned to face her fully, and there was something in his expression she'd never seen before. Hope without calculation, vulnerability without strategy. I don't know how to do this right, he said quietly. I'll probably fuck it up. I'll probably calculate when I should just feel or document when I should just trust. I'm going to make mistakes because I was raised to treat relationships like business negotiations. I know, but I'm going to try, every day, to be someone who deserves you instead of someone who trapped you. Mara reached for his hand, a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Then try. And I'll decide every day whether your trying is enough. No contracts, no guarantees, just trying. I can work with that. They stood together on the terrace, the Alps spread out before them like possibilities instead of prison walls, and Mara thought, this wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined. It was messy and complicated and built on a foundation of manipulation and betrayal. But it was also real, maybe for the first time. And real was better than calculated. The villa had changed. Not dramatically. It was still obscene wealth and alpine isolation, but in small ways that mattered. Mara's photos from Nairobi mixed with Adrian's art collection. Her tech equipment shared space with his financial terminals. Their separate bedrooms had gradually merged into shared space that neither of them had planned, but both of them wanted. The Rothshield family was still furious with them approximately 70% of the time, but they were also grudgingly grateful. Mara's digital ethics division had saved them from 3 major scandals, increased profitability, and actually improved their public image. Adrian's support of her initiatives had positioned him as the progressive heir and earned respect from younger family members tired of old money methods. They were changing the system, slowly, imperfectly, but actually changing it. Quarterly reports, Adrian said, dropping a stack of documents on the breakfast table where Mara was working. Read them to me. I'm busy. You're playing that mobile game you pretend you don't play. I'm strategically relaxing between tasks. There's a difference. Adrian leaned over her shoulder, pressing a kiss to her temple. You're terrible at lying. I learned from the best. Ouch. But he was smiling. The reports are good, by the way. Your African infrastructure investments are up 40%. My father is furious and impressed in equal measure. My favorite emotional state for him. Mara saved her game, turned to face Adrian properly. You know what today is? Wednesday? It's been exactly 1 year since I renewed the contract. Since we decided to actually try this. Adrian's expression softened. Has it been everything you hoped for? God, no. You're still calculating. I'm still angry half the time. And your family still looks at me like I'm a virus that infected their perfect dynasty. Mara stood, moving into his space. But it's real. Messy and complicated and absolutely nothing like a fairy tale. But it's real. Is that enough? It's more than enough. It's everything. He kissed her properly this time. Not the desperate collision in the snow, not the calculated intimacy of those early manipulations, but something gentler, something that felt like choice instead of circumstance. I love you, Adrian said against her lips, and before you ask if that's calculated, it's not. It's just true. Inconveniently, terrifyingly true. I love you too, Mara admitted, despite my better judgment and every survival instinct I possess. You're a terrible life choice, and I'm making you anyway. Romantic. Honest. They stood in their shared space, built on betrayal and manipulation and systematic destruction of everything Mara had been before. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like home, not because it was perfect, but because it was theirs. The laptop on the table chimed. Another report, another crisis, another challenge to face. But for once, Mara didn't immediately jump to solve it. She stayed in Adrian's arms, in their villa, in the life they'd built from the ruins of his manipulation and her fury. And she thought, maybe love wasn't about finding someone perfect. Maybe it was about finding someone flawed who was willing to do the messy work of being better. Together. We should probably look at that report, Adrian said. Probably. Neither of them moved. Outside, snow fell over the Alps like it had every winter for millions of years. Inside, two brilliant, damaged people chose each other. Again, for the 1000th time since that night in the parking garage. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything.